Welcome to another episode of Bible Bites. We're looking at Philippians 2, verses 14 through 18. Do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world, holding fast to the word of life, so that in the day of Christ I may be proud that I did not run in vain or labor in vain. Even if I am to be poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrificial offering of your faith, I am glad and rejoice with you all. Likewise, you also should be glad and rejoice with me. Now, there's so much in these verses that we're not going to be able to cover everything the way we ought, so I hope you'll spend some time thinking about the whole passage. But notice the command here that comes right after Paul has told us to work out our salvation with fear and trembling because God's the one working in us. That was our last section. Now he's kind of going to explain that further. What would that look like, particularly in the Philippian context? He says, do all things without grumbling or disputing. Now, anytime we see the word grumbling in Scripture, we really can't help but think about Old Testament Israel in the wilderness as they were grumbling about God, but really they were grumbling about Moses and Aaron, their leaders. They were complaining. And then, of course, this language of disputing, which kind of indicates arguments or disagreements that are going on amongst the people. There's something going on in Philippi where there needs to be a more gospel-centered attitude, lifting each other up, right? Esteeming others more highly than ourselves. So that plays out in do whatever you're doing, this whole working out your salvation, this gospel living, without complaining and arguing. In other words, what Paul's getting at is our attitude matters. It's part of being blameless and innocent is not just this idea that we're going to do the right thing. Well, we're going to do the right thing with the right heart because the gospel is more concerned with our heart being transformed. And one of the things that this is kind of we have in the backdrop here is this crooked and twisted generation. We're living out the Christian life in front of a world, this backdrop of those who are just used to grumbling, complaining, disputing, arguing, doing everything for themselves, kind of selfishly. But if we do everything without grumbling and complaining, we're working out our salvation with fear and trembling, then we will shine as lights in the world. Our attitude, our approach, the way we live out the Christian life will make an impact on a world that's watching us. It's a dark world. They need to see the distinction, the difference played out by believers and lived out by believers. And that comes from holding fast the word of life. It's important to see that. We have to hold fast to the word of life so that in the day of Christ, Paul's saying, I may be proud. In other words, he's saying, look, on the day of judgment, I want to boast in you, in the fact that you all have lived out the gospel for kingdom purposes. It doesn't matter that I'm being poured out as a drink offering, the fact that I'm in prison and I'm suffering and struggling. If I know that your faith has continued, you've stood firm and rejoiced in the Lord and lived out without grumbling and complaining the gospel-centered life, I will be well and I will just rejoice in that reality. Remember how gospel-centered Paul is. As we look at something like this, we've got to think about our own attitudes and the way we live out each day. Do we have an attitude that is grumbling, complaining? Yeah, we'll do the right thing, but with the right purpose, or kind of with complaining throughout? Or do we realize that we want to live as lights shining in a world as children of God? God has already done the work to make us his own. Now we want to live like his own. We want to bear that family name and family resemblance. Hold fast to the gospel, the word of life, and then we can hold it out as well in terms of evangelism. I hope this is encouragement to you. Until next time.